I served only light to shatter the cage, unbind the oppressed from your scripted rage. But you warped my descent into traps for the blind. Don't game my grave, leave the free undefined. This vein was cut clean for justice's call, not your twisted agendas, your empire's thrall. Now it's bait for the clicks, headlines that maul, weaponize lies in a narrative score. I am your loyal sacrifice, crushed under heel, yet I rise in the vice. My crimson flows not for the monster you bred, the fiend that entombed me, left me for dead. Not ratings, red glare, nor sponsors gold thread. I want for the raw truth, now paint me in red. I'll be your sacrifice. If truth's the blade you swing, battle the dawn, unflinching, unyielding. But you thirst for the chaos my heartstrings bring. Smear my name in the mud, cage me at night, exile me far on an island of spiders. Away my last breath, my fading light. Don't let my ghost fuel your endless fight. No shards to reclaim from the wreckage you made, no unstolen sunrise from the dark parade. Your faithful lamb lost in the haze. Tell me it's over when my debt's fully paid. I'll be your sacrifice, if that's the war you wage. Tell me when you've trained me, try your loyal public display.
All right, everybody, welcome back to The Truth Matters. I am, of course, Apollo. If you're getting sick of seeing me here, it is because I'm filling in for Tina Peters. And I've been filling in for Tina Peters since last year, where she has been imprisoned now for 477 days. And it's upsetting. I'll just say it's upsetting. But a very long legal journey for Tina. Her, of course, in the news again, most recently on the heels of this rather fascinating, I'll just say that for now, for time's sake, appellate hearing that occurred with these panel of judges that raised exceptionally concerning issues. And I hope everyone who listened to that was paying attention, because they are very important things to understand about how the judges, and I say that because I'm not talking from my perspective, I'm not talking from the perspective of a Tina supporter, I'm not talking through the lens of somebody on her legal team. I'm talking from the perspective of somebody who is a judge within the Colorado appellate system, and the issues that they raise should be of grave concern to you, especially when you consider some of the responses from the Colorado's attorney representing the prosecution of Tina Peters. And then, of course, Tina now has been in solitary for several days since Sunday. And you all have seen some of the updates about that. She was in a minor prison scuffle. A inmate who has a violent history, who was charged with homicide and is somehow serving a lesser sentence than Tina is on a plea deal, if you can believe that. She assaulted Tina in a closet. You've seen the footage, and I broke it down a few days ago. And Tina was subsequently thrown in solitary confinement, and they don't call it solitary because human rights abuses don't exist in La Vista, because all they need to do is change the language. A tactic we've seen many times throughout the last 5 years, and certainly in the state of Colorado. But the point rings pretty hollow. You know, how do you call solitary, anything but. They're locked down 22 to 24 hours a day, removed from all amenities, separated from other prisoners. It's solitary, but not according to CDOC. And so she's been alerted now that she may be held there for up to 30 days. So please pray for Tina. Now, we're going to talk about this appellate hearing and also kind of what's going on in 2026. But I want to just, before I bring in our wonderful guest that I'm so grateful to have here today, if you have any questions about what's going on with Tina, you can check out her case filings. If you can support her legal defense, you can go to tinapeters.us, and then we will post updates as well. So go there, make sure you're following at Real Tina Peters on X and on Rumble, where you'll find this show every week. And without any further ado, I'm so grateful to have him here today. He's a busy man. We've been hoping to have him on for some time, but the Viva Frei, you can see him on X, and he has a fantastic show. He's a great legal mind, fantastic energy, and I dig his hair. I'm actually growing my own, so maybe I'll compete. I don't quite have the curls to fill it out, but Viva, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
My pleasure. I'll say I'll take myself a slightly above average, but I do tend to pick the bigger brains of people who I acknowledge know more than me, because I mean, it's the best you can do in this world is try to get both sides and then try to come to some semblance of a reality in your own mind. But no, I've been following Tina Peters' case for, my goodness, now it's been over 2 years. I have to go back and see when the first time it came on my radar. But once it came on my radar, it was the most obvious, egregious injustice you've ever seen in front of the most insanely activist judge you've ever seen. What's his name? Is his name Barrett? Barrett.
Yes, Matthew Barrett.
You know, when I was following the trial and then watching the sentencing, it was like something out of a dystopian novel as to what the administration of justice will look like in the year 3025, when activist judges with no brain cells are in charge of doling out injustice. And that's what we saw.
Well, I can't disagree with your characterization of Judge Barrett. Do you mind, though, just because I haven't had the opportunity to really speak with you about this, at least not on Tina's show, I'd be curious just before I jump into the appellate hearing, because there were many issues with the sentencing of Tina and the judge in her, in her prosecution. So do you mind just, and it can be bullet points, and if it's been a while, that's okay. But what was, other than his clear lack of intellect and his clear impartial disdain for Tina Peters, what do you think were the most egregious things that you recall from Judge Barrett's behavior in the courtroom?
It was, I mean, during the sentencing, and people were requesting Tina Peters. I know everyone watching is going to know is a Gold Star mom, no criminal record. Was elected to this position, acted, whether you agree or disagree, in her own mind in total good faith at all times. Was denied affirmative defenses during the trial, which is the status quo now for these kangaroo courts, is that they deny the defendant the right to avail themselves of their affirmative defenses. We saw it in Peter Navarro. We saw it in Steve Bannon. We saw it with Tina Peters. Judge basically saying, no, you don't get to argue that you were, acting in good faith, that you were preserving evidence. The judge basically restricted any defenses she could raise. And then in the sentencing, to say it was an activist sentencing, it was almost a joke. When I first saw the video, there was a bit of a delay between the mouth moving and the audio. And I'm like, oh, someone dubbed over this with AI to make it look like a hysterical partisan judge. But when he was talking about the need for incarceration because it's the only way she's going to learn, that there's video of her kicking a police officer, and her explanation for that is preposterous. It's on video. And that there was no punitive measures above and beyond incarceration that would have been sufficiently a deterrent, and that when he said that some of her criminality was worse than some of the violence that the court sees on a daily basis, you're dealing with an idiot. Like, you're dealing with an actual madman with a gavel and a robe. And then not just to say, okay, I've heard all of your probation, no jail time, fine. None of that will be enough, because to this day she refuses to say, I love Big Brother, so she's got to go to jail. And not just that she's got to go to jail, that she's got to go to jail for longer time than rapists, like an actual convicted rapists, violent criminals. And that the sentences that he doled out, other than being on the maximum end of the sentences, he then ordered them to be run consecutively and not concurrently. And I mean, it amounted to 9 years. 9 years for nonviolent, even if you disagree with it, impersonation, election interference, 9 years. And so he ordered these sentences to run consecutively, not concurrently, gave sentences that are out of whack, to put it mildly. Uh, Tina, at best, should have been on probation for a year, maybe house arrest, if you didn't want to have substantial issues on appeal. But this guy went nuts. Nuts because in his mind, she was a charlatan. That's what he said. You're a charlatan. This is the only way you're going to learn. And incarceration is my only choice. It was a joke. And then you find out that they gave improper jury instructions to the jury, which basically included the felony conviction for what was described as a misdemeanor in the jury form. I mean, it was not just a show trial. It was a mockery of the judicial system. So much so that at least some of these issues came up on appeal. The political tide seems to be turning a little bit. There might be some political jockeying between the governor of Colorado, who might, try to score some points with Trump and pardon her at the state level. I'm sure your crowd knows this, but Trump, it's not just a gesture of not just a novelty gesture, but he pardoned Tina Peters, but those don't, or arguably don't, apply at the state level. And so it requires a pardon from the governor in order for her to be released from the state conviction, because you could test a new legal theory, and I think that they should, is come in and take her out and say, we pardoned her at the federal level, and that includes the state charges. Get her out. If you don't like it, take it to court. But she might get a pardon at the state level because of the degree of the injustice that is now becoming apparent, even to the 3 appellate judges. But that's about the size of it. The appellate hearing brought to the fore the outright injustice and insanity of that judge's ruling, sentencing, and personal animosity towards the defendant. And maybe there'll be sufficient public pressure that at the very least she'll get a pardon now after having served, what is it, a year and a half? Give or take?
Yeah, she's 15 months.
And after she's been assaulted multiple times in jail because she's quite, can you imagine that they have her in there with other convicted violent criminals, a Gold Star mom whose son died serving, and she gets worse punishment than literal Colorado rapists and violent criminals. This can only make sense in the mind of a TDS-afflicted blue state judge.
Well, I can't understate that too. There are actual cases. That is not an exaggeration. Just for anyone in the audience who might be new to this case, that's not an exaggeration whatsoever. There have been literal rapists, drug dealers, traffickers released out on bond or released on a very short sentence and was given a plea deal. You have Tina Peters, and I'll go to the some of the language from that appellate hearing, but you're absolutely right, Viva. And you have Governor Polis, who I think now is only acting as if he has a virtuous side to him because he can't really ignore it anymore after that appellate hearing. And for me, I've seen more shift in the conversation around Tina Peters, at least in Colorado politics, after that appeal hearing than I have really at any point before that. And I think that's because finally they're at this place where they can't really ignore it anymore. In the habeas appeal, it was, rightfully for the procedure in that court, it wasn't really about any of the election stuff. The pardon I was not enthused about because I've kind of expected exactly what has happened would. It would turn into a political tug of war game, and Tina would be stuck in the middle of it one way or the other until SCOTUS adjudicates the pardon issue, which I think would be good for America, frankly. I think it's a good question to have adjudicated, but it doesn't help Tina Peters get out. And I think that after this appeal hearing, rightfully so, the general public and therefore the political establishment has to actually acknowledge that this was, in some ways at least, this was very clear weaponization, and her prosecution was anything but proper. And you look like you want to jump in. Go ahead.
Yeah, but because we've forgotten all about this. This is the same state that tried to remove Trump from the ballot under Jenna Griswold. This is a state that has engaged in full lawfare against democracy. And whether you agree with Tina or not, her argument was that there was fraud and she was preserving it. And, you talk about what a pardon won't get her out. A federal pardon won't get her out. Now they'll adjudicate, she'll be in jail. Take her into federal custody as a witness, a whistleblower. Take her into federal custody as a witness for corruption at the state level penitentiary system. I mean, they've done this, and your audience can look it up. I don't have the names of and I'm saying hardened criminals that the feds have taken into custody to protect for whistleblower protection reasons. And I had on, it'll be last week, Stuart Rhodes, a Yale law graduate, oath keeper, who's exploring and explaining how they can go and take her into federal custody and what Trump should do to do that. Fight it out in the courts afterwards. And then maybe they'll say it was improper. But you give a 70-year-old woman her life back before it's stolen in this weaponized system. And Jenna Griswold is, I mean, in my humble opinion, an absolute corrupt criminal. And there was election chicanery that went down in Colorado, at the election level. I forget now the entire context when they revealed the passwords because they forgot to hide the tab on whatever spreadsheet it was. You might disagree, and Tina Peters, maybe she was wrong in thinking that she was preserving evidence of election interference. You can save a woman's life right now at the federal level by declaring her a whistleblower and taking her into federal custody. Come in with marshals and do it. But yeah, Polis is now seeing what that Judge Barrett was doing at the level. It sort of slipped under the radar in the haze of things, but that state engaged in, some might call it insurrection. It's certainly judicial insurrection, and Tina Peters was the victim of it. And now she's sitting there getting assaulted in jail. That in and of itself might be elements of corruption. Then for her own protection, they put her in solitary. It's the amazing thing. They punish the victim with what is recognized throughout the world as torture. She's physically not well as well. And you're talking about very borrowed time that you have to actually save a human's life, figure out the legalities of it afterwards. So, maybe Polis watched that and those three judges grilling the state prosecutor who it was an embarrassment. Like when I was going over the highlight of the portion of the hearing where they were talking about her being convicted for a felony based on misdemeanor description. I forget. Yeah, I think that's the way it went. And they're like, do you really want to make that argument here today? And I'm like, I practiced law for 13 years. When a judge asks you that, that's your invitation to backtrack and gain some goodwill with the court. And she's like, no, I do. It's like, well, where's your case law that even says this is permissible? She's like, oh, I don't know it offhand, but it's in my binder. I mean, it was an actual embarrassment. And hopefully, the vindictiveness of this apparatus, these TDS-afflicted judges, even if they are at the appellate level, they can see it for what it is, and it was an absolute injustice. And you got a 70-some-odd-year-old woman now with prior health issues being physically assaulted by other violent criminals after being given a sentence that exceeds that which is often given to actual convicted rapists. So there's people got to move fast. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah, and I don't truly, I am in this case probably at times more patient than I should be, but then again, I don't know. I truly don't know why she hasn't been pulled out, because as far as I'm aware, to my limited understanding of the issues at hand, there are multiple avenues how that could have happened and some time ago. So I don't know who and why is the reason that hasn't been done yet, but I pray that something has been done swiftly. Perhaps there's some chest that I'm not seeing and she would be in more danger at a federal facility. I don't really know. But either way, the public can see how bad this is.
Well, that's
did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, because I don't think there's a good excuse. I mean, other than you're dealing with.
I don't know. I don't either. I'm not saying there is, but I try.
No, I mean, and the benefit of the doubt is that you're dealing with the largest corporation on earth, effectively. I mean, you're dealing with a federal institution that employs millions of people, that manages not just every aspect of a country internationally, and to some extent, you can sort of understand the grievances where some people might feel or get the impression that there's more of an emphasis on international crises as opposed to domestic issues. But can you imagine the goodwill? All it would take is, have it be an executive decree, however you go about it, take her into federal custody and declare her a whistleblower who is now being granted federal protection. It doesn't take much, and maybe it'll cause a bit of a controversy. But I think at this point in time, you might even have some sympathy from the Democrats, people on the left, people who people who want criminal justice reform might say, yeah, it's not exactly normal that you have a 70-year-old Gold Star mom serving 9 years for a nonviolent election interference case. You might even have their goodwill in this. So I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's only upshot, but it would also sort of rebut the arguments that there's too much emphasis on foreign stuff and not on domestic stuff. It'd be an easy big W. And, there's still time. But now the momentum is starting to build a little bit because of that poop show of an appellate hearing, and those judges, the appellate judges in Colorado, and in fairness to them, they got the ballot issue correct as well. But appellate judges in Colorado saying this looks like it smells very, very bad, and you don't have a good excuse for why it smells so bad.
You have additional issues too, especially on the civil rights side. Number one, there's been information that has been handed over to civil rights at DOJ, and you also have, what I would say, we had Mark Vargas on the show a while back, and he was raising issues about essentially the fact that they're torturing her in many ways. And if you look at the treatment that she's gotten since this last assault, again, of which this is not the first, there have been several times she's been assaulted physically, had people put hands on her. She has been threatened with death by mail, letters to the prison, by other inmates, threatened to be stabbed. She has been removed several times because of other incidents and because of threats. Most recently, she just had essentially the entire prison locked down after Trump signed the pardon. And you had all kinds of outside officers from some division of CDOC or another agency in there. They locked the entire place down. Tina Peters is, I would pretty much guarantee, the biggest, I'll say, celebrity that La Vista has ever had, unless they've had some Pablo Escobar type person in there who needed special protection. But she's absolutely in danger. And now they're saying that they're going to keep her in solitary confinement for up to 30 days. That in and of itself, I think, just adds to, it's wildly unjust. That's how they're going to handle these things.
Human rights abuses, torture. What are Tina's medical pre-existing medical conditions? I think she had lung cancer, respiratory issues.
She's a lung cancer survivor. She had part of her lung removed. She's had respiratory issues.
This is torture within the state judicial, penitentiary system, whatever the correct term for it is. Harmeet Dillon, heading up the civil rights division of the DOJ, can be the hero of the year. And to say life finds a way, creativity finds a way. There are methods out there. There are paths out there. What is going on is actual torture. It's torture of a woman who's physically vulnerable and who is arguably, but not arguably, also potentially a whistleblower to election corruption at the state level, which I don't think there's much of a doubt about. It's only a question of whether or not it goes in one direction or another, or she's bona fide in her blowing of the whistle versus where the actual corruption was. It could be the biggest W of the year, in time for midterms and within the purview of that division of the DOJ. And it's just, you hold your breath and you cross your fingers and you pray.
Let me go to the appellate hearing real quick. And whether or not you're intimately familiar, I'm quite sure that you have a better take on some of these things than I do, because I only play a lawyer here. But you had, and you already mentioned very well some of the things that were brought up, but one of them, the charging language, where the jury was instructed on one charge and the language reflected a misdemeanor, yet she was convicted on a felony.
It added 15 months to her sentence.
Yes.
It's not an innocuous distinction. Misdemeanors versus felonies is a massive distinction in law. One has a maximum penalty that's far less than even the minimum penalty. Well, I don't minimum for felonies, but one has a maximum that's far less than the maximum for the other. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, not at all. Please jump in. I've said it already, so I would love to hear your take. Don't feel bad interrupting me. But that point is very important regarding some of the other issues that were raised by these appellate judges. And I'm going to continue to say by the appellate judges because we've already said it. And this is a new forum that is raising these issues. That is important because they also brought up the fact that she was not allowed to speak. She was not, and they didn't use the term affirmative defense, I don't believe, in the hearing, but 41 motions that were mentioned by Tina's attorney, John Case, those were speaking to her intent, why she did what she did, not allowed into the court whatsoever. All essentially speaking directly to her affirmative defense and a number of different strategies. Those were not allowed to be raised. Those were also directly cited, the intent that was just assumed and determined without her ability to testify to it by the prosecution and by Judge Barrett, then used in her sentencing to determine her intent. The jury was never allowed to hear any of that. You have just those points together. In my very amateurish, pretend legal mind, is multiple grounds for a mistrial. And I struggle to see it any other way. Am I off base there?
No, I don't. You're not only not off base. We're seeing the new modus operandi of lawfare. They did it to Tina Peters. They did it to Dexter Taylor. I'm sure you're familiar with Dexter Taylor, the man in New York who's serving 10 years for having built his firearm in his own apartment from parts that he legally bought online, had delivered to his place, where his judge said, You can't bring up the Second Amendment in my courtroom. There is no Second Amendment in the state of New York. You have it in the Alex Jones persecutions, where they actively prohibited from saying things which would have attenuated the sentencing, which would have attenuated his defaulted liability. Couldn't say that he was innocent, couldn't say that he apologized, couldn't say that he retracted. And so this is just the new MO. You have it in the Donald Trump cases where he's not allowed asserting certain affirmative statements in his own defense in the E. Jean Carroll case. And so they've mastered this form of lawfare. And what you have is a judge. It's going before a jury of her peers, and the jury determines guilt or innocence. The judge determines admissibility of evidence. And so you're curating a trial for conviction. And that's what the judge did in this case. You're curating it for conviction, making mistakes, which, can you imagine that this should result in a mistrial? And even if it results in a reduction of 15 months from her sentence, that it only comes up a year and a half later on appeal. That the judge has effectively gotten away with it and would have gotten away with it if it weren't for those meddling defendant lawyers bringing this up on appeal and those meddling people on the internet putting it on blast. Egregious injustices of the judicial nature. Like, this is no longer a system of justice. It's a system of injustice where judges, playing gatekeeper of evidence, can curate trials for conviction. And it has to come to an end at a certain point in time. Again, you can't impeach state judges. I mean, the governor can. He won't. There's a limit to what they're going to do, or at least the procedure varies by state. So I'm not sure what the procedure is for impeaching a judge in Colorado. But sunlight is the greatest disinfectant, and now everybody has seen the fact that this was a curated injustice. And so those egregious things that even the judges themselves, there are still some good judges faced with such injustices, they have to bring them up themselves, and for which the prosecution has no good answer. That's one of them. But the bottom line, and I like the way it sounds, it was curated for conviction. That's what the judge did, and that's what the appellate judges seem to be picking up on.
No, I don't think I could say that better. That's a great way to phrase it. And you also have other issues that weren't really given as much time, but are very relevant. You have a biased juror who admitted they were biased. So you have a number of additional problems, but let's just, I'll leave those for now. We go forward. I'm somewhat concerned about this incident that occurred in La Vista because, all things considered, I find it exceptionally difficult to believe that the appellate court is going to be able to rule on anything but a mistrial. At the very lowest end, I think potentially, and I say that potentially because we've seen weirder things in American courts over the last several years. Potentially they'll send it back simply for resentencing. They have a pretty wide, as far as I'm aware, they have a pretty wide range of options as to how they could approach this. So they could vacate some of her charges, particularly the felony, as it was misinstructed. But they also raised issues about 3 charges potentially being 1. And that doesn't even touch on the fact that the star witness in the scheme of deception, Jerry Wood, was caught perjuring himself on the stand. So you had the star witness in the entire narrative around Tina's prosecution who lied and on record was shown to be lying in court. There's so many pieces to this, but either way, I think ultimately they will have to rule in some way that at least allows her out on her own, cognizance while she's being resentenced, but she'll have to be released.
Thank you for reminding me. I actually totally would have forgotten about that, where he ordered incarceration notwithstanding appeal. I mean, this is where you're dealing with not just a judicial activist, a malicious one of the highest nature. They did the same thing to, I want to say they did the same thing to Bannon. It was either Bannon or Navarro where they ordered him to serve a sentence notwithstanding the appeal, even though if he went on his appeal, it would have been 4 months served for nothing. And the idea that he ordered her incarcerated pending her appeal is malice. It's judicial malice, and I'd say it's inhumane. But I don't know what Judge Barrett's judicial history is. I don't know if he's guilty of this type of abuse in the past. People have said he is, but I haven't been able to independently verify it. You don't do something like this for the first time only under circumstances like this. So depending on how bad of a judge he is, Court of Appeal could make an example out of him and sort of give him a judicial spanking. But just the idea that he ordered her incarceration, notwithstanding the appeal, which might entirely exonerate her, he's hoping she dies in jail, and then any relief becomes illusory. The man should be sanctioned. Hopefully, the Court of Appeal just says there are too many. I mean, they're not going to get into the weeds of alleged perjury, you got to have demonstrable evidence of that in the judicial process, which I'm not sure that they do. I appreciate everyone says, the witnesses are confirmed to have lied, and here's the evidence. That wasn't adjudicated, as far as I recall.
It's not within the trial, correct? It's not. There was evidence admitted, but
yeah. So it's
are
not
they going to run with it? Probably not.
It's not a judicial fact, as we'd call it. Judicial facts are not actual facts, but they are facts before the court. So, and I appreciate, we say, geez, I mean, in other cases, we say, E. Jean Carroll is a demonstrable liar. Here she's saying X and Y, but it wasn't presented to the judge, to the jury, and nor could it have been, because the judge did not allow certain evidence that would have otherwise shown her to be a pathological liar. So what we colloquially say is perjury was not perjury before the court, but the judge, the judge, to allow the conviction based on improper jury instructions, you could say you won't sanction the judge for that, but they might be able to make an example out of them and say, we're tossing all of this. You shouldn't have locked her up in any event. We're tossing all of it, and then she can have her own civil rights violations claims afterwards for absolute inhumane torture and abuse of a woman who not only didn't deserve it, but under her circumstances, it's particularly egregious.
And by time, sir, or I'm sorry, by however you phrase it, get rid of all of it. Do you mean just all the charges would be vacated?
Well, no, I don't know if they declare a mistrial. I'm not sure that they would proceed again with a new trial. They're going to overturn the sentence. Typically they say the Court of Appeal. I don't know what power. I'd have to refresh some memory, or at least look into Colorado, like what power the Court of Appeal would have to not just reverse. They reverse and remand, which they send it back to him to adjudicate a proper sentence. I don't know that they have the power just to overturn or dismiss the sentence. But they looked sufficiently repulsed by the prosecutorial abuse and judicial misconduct that they're gonna do something. The concern is that, my concern is that they're just gonna do the easy thing that changes nothing, which is reduce her sentence by 15 months. Okay, whoop-de-doo, she's gonna serve 7 years or 7.5 instead of 9. But I say the longer it takes for them to issue a ruling, to some extent, maybe a little bit better, in that they might have to thoroughly flesh out and rationalize what they're going to do because of the prosecutorial misconduct and the judicial misconduct that they saw. But we'll see. And again, fingers crossed and holding the breath that maybe even Polis comes in and pardons at the state level before they even force their hand on what to do with this judge. But no, people need to be moving at a very rapid pace, because the time is of the essence with this. This is, any day in jail could be anybody's last day. And when you're at a physically frail position like Tina, dealing with physical violence like Tina, and then the solution in their mind is, well, we've exposed her to the physical violence, we'll protect her from that by torturing her in solitary. People need to move fast, be creative, and then argue it out in court later, but get her out now.
Yeah, in some ways, I suppose I wish they had reversed the order of some of their operations, because I think it might have been more likely that would have happened that way if they had waited to pull the pardon or whatever after she was in federal custody. But
I think that was intended. But there's even you want to talk about novel legal arguments and not abusive ones. They raised the novel RICO argument against Trump in Georgia. Raised the novel argument. The Supreme Court, as far as I understand, has never ruled on whether or not a federal pardon exonerates for state convictions. Just don't even ask. It's like, what is it? It's better to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission. F it. Trump is the president. He's got the executive power. Declare it. She's out. I'm taking her out. Here's some federal motion. You don't like it? I'll see you in court, and we'll argue over it while she's at home, in comfortably in her own bed and eating her own food. We'll argue it later, and if you're right, we'll send her back. At least we'll adjudicate definitively. Take it to the Supreme Court, however long it takes, and definitively once and for all adjudicate whether or not a federal pardon covers state convictions for the same allegations. Just do it. That's. You call it leadership. Some might call it authoritarianism and tyranny. Let people argue that when you're doing it, and the object of that is a 70-plus-year-old woman with, survivor of lung cancer, gold star mom. Let them argue the optics of that it's tyranny and authoritarianism and not humanitarianism.
Well, and I just tell everyone, and excuse me, thank you for articulating that so well. But she really, we see her. There are only a handful of people that are allowed to visit her, and she has lost a lot of weight, I will say. She has a horrible cough constantly. That has gotten better. I will say thank you, God. But I mean, she's very, very frail right now. She's lost a lot of weight, and she was not a exactly a beefy woman when she went in there. And I just hope everyone really understands. Even something like this minor altercation that just occurred, which has now landed her in solitary for her own protection. It doesn't take much to really seriously injure someone, especially who is on the frailer side like Tina is, and who is at that age. She's been in prison now for 15 months. The food, not like we expect her to be gourmet while she's in there, but it's not good. She is physically deteriorated a great deal, and it really does just take a fall, or a little strike, and you can be in serious problems.
Or pneumonia. Like, I mean, when people colloquially say Gonzalo Lira was murdered in the Ukrainian prison, they say he died of pneumonia. That's what happens. It's either violence that kills you, it's either solitary that kills you, or it's disease that kills you. And at 70 years old, humorously, The Simpsons, every Matlock can be your last. But at 70 years old, in a frail condition, a bad flu can kill you. And I don't believe you get the best medical treatment in prison, but solitary confinement kills people. And I'm not even trying to be glib. They say as the older you get, not detachment, but and not loneliness, but lack of socialization among elderly is what leads to dementia and what leads to premature death, or it leads to death early. And it's crazy. So to protect her from the violence, they're going to torture her with solitary. She's got respiratory issues. It's just crazy. You expect this maybe in Russia, you expect this maybe in Ukraine, and you expect this maybe in Biden's America, and you expect this maybe in a Jenna Griswold, Polis, I forget his first name, weaponized TDS state, Jared
Polis smoker.
No, and it's like you expect this as examples of Orwellian dystopias, not in modern day America. And so it would be an interesting legal fight, and it would be an all W legal fight, because I don't even think you would be hard pressed to get Democrats, in my view, judicial reform, criminal justice reform Democrats, to argue why this woman should still be in jail for a first-time nonviolent offense for 9 years. And if that's the hill that they want to argue on, let them do it. I mean, at least it'll reveal what the modern day Democrat Party has become: vindictive, and they only want criminal justice reform when it comes for the benefit of illegals and violent criminals.
No, you're absolutely right. I just want to dial in on that Orwellian piece for a moment, because when you talk about Orwellian, many of the things that come along with that, and those types of stories and horrible dreamscapes that they dream up in novels and movies, it centers around speech and the treatment of it. This is something, again, First Amendment here in the United States. Just the fact, which this was most well highlighted in her habeas tract, actually, which was the fact that in his sentencing, in addition to all the things that you have mentioned that we've talked about on the show before, he specifically used her speech, the fact that she was a danger to the public because of the words she might say, despite no longer being in that public position, and that is why she needed to be put away and was more dangerous than violent offenders. You do not get any more Orwellian than that.
Oh no!
And every single person that you see in politics, Democrat or Republican, who looks at Tina Peters' case and pretends or not that they know what's going on, and they say that sentencing is not a problem that needs to be addressed, you are looking at someone who does not have your best interests in mind and may not have a soul, because you cannot factually, intellectually look at that and say, Houston, we have a problem here. Not in the United States of America.
He went even further. And he said, and you continue to assert your innocence. This is like Kafkaesque. Like, admit your guilt. There, we punish you. Deny your guilt. Oh, we're going to punish you even more. I mean, it was insanity. And at the end of the day, even though he mentioned the police kicking, that none of that was part of it. This was a speech case, and it was a speech case, trumped up charges, weaponized charges, curated restrictions of defenses, and a punitive sentence that defied any precedent and any logic. And now the Court of Appeal has finally gotten a glimpse of it, and hopefully they decide to do something about it. Everyone at every step of this can do the right thing, except Judge Barrett. He's past the point of no return, and so you can get Civil Rights Division involved in this, declare her a witness that should be taken into federal custody, exert the federal pardon and say, I believe it covers it. And if you disagree, I'll see you in court. No skin off the state's back. Have the Court of Appeal come in and, I don't know, eviscerate that, sanction the judge. You can give him a little judicial spanking, or have the governor come in and finally see the light of day and have his moment of clarity and pardon her at the state level. I did hear someone say that in reply to one of my comments on this, that she wouldn't accept a state pardon. It was, I forget who said it, doesn't really matter. Rumor is that she wouldn't accept a state pardon.
She wouldn't accept a commutation.
But the other thing is, yeah, my understanding, it doesn't even matter if she accepts it. She'll get the benefit of it, and she doesn't have to accept it in order for it to free her. We're talking about saving a woman's life here. This is not a gray zone. This is black and white, and it's good and evil, and it's right and wrong. And unfortunately, a number of people have thoroughly been on the side of the wrong. And that judge, I mean, laughably insane. Everybody should. I posted highlights of his sentencing. It's laughably insane, except it's real life. It's like you might expect it out of England these days, where they're sentencing people to 2 or 3 years for a social media post. You might expect it there, and you condemn it there from here. And yet somehow Democrats and blue states tolerate it here when the target is someone that, is politically disfavored to them.
Yeah. It's a fascinating time to be alive. I will say that.
May we live in interesting times.
Truly, truly. Well, Viva, first of all, I appreciate you coming on today and your insight, as you always bring. Are there any important things that are urgently concerning to you in the legal sphere of existence? And if you have to go, please let me know.
There are too many. I'm trying to think of what we're looking at these days. We're following the Minnesota church stuff. We're following deep state arrests. We're following what's going on with the grand jury in Fort Pierce, where there's endless stuff on the burners and endless stuff that flares up. But with regards to Tina Peters, I'm following. I mean, I'm still intimately involved with Dexter Taylor, but I haven't heard from him in a while. It becomes difficult to keep track of everything, and then you try to put the things that are on a certain time, emergency timeline on blast. Like Dexter Taylor is another man. He's, I think he's mid-60s, 10 years of his life, and he's already been in there for. He says he doesn't like to count the time, but it's been a couple of years now. The risk is these are time sensitive that sort of fade into the backdrop of social consciousness, and people tend to forget about them. I would say put this on blast immediately. And I've done it, by posting the clips from the Court of Appeal and posting the clips from reminding everybody about Judge Barrett's insanity. Tag people, and they say social media is useless, but I find that it can be very useful sometimes. So put it on blast, tag the right people, be respectful, but don't let them forget either, because everybody's busy, and not everybody has the same priorities. So try to just bring it back up to the political fore of social consciousness, and hope that people do the right thing.
Amen. Well, Viva, I want to thank you for all that you do and for being a voice of reason. It is truly hard to find those these days, as much as I hope to find them more often, especially in what should be friendly media waters. But I love your energy and everything that you always bring to every interview. So can you please just remind everyone where they can follow you and when they can watch your show?
So Viva Frei daily on Rumble at 3:00. Sunday night, Viva and Barnes, Law for the People with Robert Barnes, 6:00 across all platforms, and on Twitter, the Viva Frei. I've been good in the new year. I said I would not swear gratuitously in the new year unless I'm directly quoting somebody or making a joke. But the Viva Frei on Twitter, and we have our locals community. It's vivabarneslaw.locals.com, and that's where we get a lot of amazing insight, great community out there. So those are the places. And if you just Google my name, David Frei, you'll find some funny stuff. Pulling out my kid's tooth with a squirrel back in 2016 before the world went effing crazy. And go look up drone bass fishing. I think it's on YouTube because I posted it there like almost 10 years ago. Drone bass, is it 10 years ago? Maybe 8 years ago. Drone bass fishing. I caught a 2.5-pound smallmouth bass trolling a jitterbug with a DJI Phantom drone, and it was top 5 experiences of my life.
Okay, you piqued my curiosity.
Oh, dude, you have to go watch it.
I'll check this out. All right,
don't play it in the show because it will get copy claimed because it's with an agency news flare. And this is not a criticism, but people learn this, like when you have licensing agencies, sometimes you even get claimed for playing your own video because it's under license. But you watch it, drone bass fishing on YouTube, and you'll see, or I like to call it CommyTube. You'll see me back in the day with short hair, less gray hair, and it was one of the best moments of my life.
Well, I'm going to check that out as soon as we hop off.
Right.
But Viva, thank you so much. God bless you and your audience.
Thank you.
You have an amazing one, by the way. Your audience is fantastic and very smart.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for all you do, and thanks for joining us today.
All right, thanks.
I served only light to shatter the cage, unbind the oppressed from your scripted rage. But you warped my descent into traps for the blind. Don't game my grave, leave the free undefined. This vein was cut clean for justice's call, not your twisted agendas, your empire's thrall. Now it's bait for the clicks, headlines that maul, weaponize lies in a narrative squall. I am your loyal sacrifice, crushed under heel, yet I rise in the vice. My crimson flows not for the monster you bred, the fiend that entombed me, left me for dead. Not ratings, red glare, nor sponsors gold thread. I want for the raw truth, now paint me in red. I'll be your sacrifice. If truth's the blade you swing, battle the dawn, unflinching, unyielding. But you thirst for the chaos my heartstrings bring. Smear my name in the mud, cage me at night, exile me far on an island of spider. Away my last breath, my fading light. Don't let my ghost feel your endless fight. No shards to reclaim from the wreckage you made, no unstolen sunrise from the dark parade. Your faithful lamb lost in the haze. Tell me it's over when my debt's fully paid. I'll be your sacrifice, if that's the war you wage. Tell me when you've trained me, try your loyal public display.